Hello, everybody. My name is Bill Luzniski, and this is the Rants on the Ruling Class podcast for the primary of the ruling class grassroots organization. And I'm here solo today for this short hot take podcast that we wanted to put out. My cohort in crime, so to speak, Todd, is a little bit under the weather today. I'm sure he'll be fine soon. But we wanted to put a few things out, though, anyway. So there are some things going on right now that on the surface may or may not make any sense. And we want to clarify it just briefly so we can all, have an accurate way to kind of look at the big picture, so to speak. And the issue has come up lately of do we have a democracy or not? And for the astute amongst you or the students among you, you'll say, no, we don't have a democracy. We never have. We've had a republic, a federal republic, which is absolutely correct. So maybe the real question is, do we still have a federal republic? And there's a very good argument to be made that the answer to that is sadly no, that we have devolved or evolved into an authoritarian state. As a matter of fact, in an interview recently with Steve Bannon, Mike Benz, who has been quite the authoritative figure, exposing a lot of deep state. We've talked about on this podcast, the authoritarianism that's going on, the globalism that's going on, the blob, as he calls it, the uniparty, however you want to say that. They have literally taken the reins of power in our country and they are controlling things. And that's why we have the censorship. That's why we have the election integrity issues and the border issues and everything else from A to Z. And his argument that he makes very clearly says that, look, they already have the reins of power. You can go listen to, and that's becoming well accepted now. You go listen to Joe Dan Gorman and his Intellectual Frog Legs podcast, his most recent episode here. He puts it very succinctly. He simply says, look, how can we have a representative republic if we clearly tell our representatives, the majority of us tell our representatives, we don't want to spend more money on Ukraine, yet they send billions anyway. We tell them we want to close the border, yet they vote to open it up even more. All of these things, we can go right on down the list. Are we really being represented? We're being taxed, but are we being represented? And of course, I always have to give the caveat, nothing on this podcast is ever inciting of violence. There is a clear path forward. There is a way to do this peacefully. But I think we have to get past the idea that we're trying to save our country. And if you think about it, President Trump has been past this for a long time now. He doesn't say, keep our country great. He says, make America great again, because we have passed that Rubicon. We're now into what I believe is an authoritarian state. So we need to get it back. And I think that needs to be the argument. I think it gets too lost in the idea that the next election is just another election. It's just a political circus, a political contest. That is not what this is. This is about our country. It's about whether we're going to live free, whether our children will have a Republican society, a federal republic to live under, and whether they'll have, freedom, economic freedom, physical freedom, moral freedom, all of those types of things that we hold so dear. So we need to really understand kind of what's happening. You have to know your enemy to be able to defeat your enemy. I think Sun Tzu first said that, the famous general. And it's very, very true. And we have to understand how they're operating. And the reason I'm saying this is because something's happened recently that a lot of people are saying, how can this possibly happen? Because if you'll remember, we had Mike McCarthy as a House Speaker. He was literally ousted because he wasn't following the agreements. He agreed that you would not have any more of these mega bus, omnibus bills come through. No longer would they put these huge spending bills in front of Congress and only give them a day to read it. They would vote separately in all these different spending proposals. All of these promises were made. Well, he broke them, and so he was ousted as Speaker of the House. And we ended up with Mike Johnson, who by all appearances seemed to be a good guy, a little bit of a compromise, but seemed to be a guy that was sincere. I personally believe he was sincere when he guaranteed that he would uphold all of those values. And he did until this week. And our House passed a $1.2 trillion omnibus spending bill under the guise of keeping our government open, of course. And this spending bill included all kinds of horrific things, which we're not going to go through in detail all of them here, but they undercut the Trump administration, they undercut immigration, they sent money to Ukraine. I mean, just all of these things that we absolutely do not want to have happen happened in this bill. And he brought it to the floor of the House and released it. We gave our members only 24 hours to read over 1,000-page omnibus spending bill, $1.2 trillion spending bill. Now that is a giant FU, I guess, to all the promises he made, to all of us constituents, to all the other members of Congress, the Freedom Caucus, etc. And you've got to ask yourself, why would he do that? Well, I want to direct you back to a podcast we did, I think, just last week before all of this happened. And we were talking about, actually, I think I was kind of ranting about the fact of how we have all these uniparty rhino Republicans that are resigning their seat in the House. Ken Buck, of course, before that, they voted George Santos out. And I don't care whether you like George Santos or not. You know, he was a Republican. He helped us hold a very slim majority in the House of Representatives, but they booted him out. Then we have other resignations. Then we have this week Mike Gallagher, a rhino Republican, announcing not only is he going to resign, but I guess we were prophetic because we said last week this is all a uniparty effort to turn control of the House over to the Democrats. Well, Mike Gallagher, lo and behold, just a few days later, announces that he's going to resign. And not only is he going to resign, but he's going to do it on such a date, I believe it's April 19th, so that there's no opportunity to replace his seat, a Republican seat, a safe Republican seat in Congress. In other words, it's going to take away yet another Republican vote in the U.S. House of Representatives. That leaves us with only a one vote majority, a one Republican, one seat majority in the House of Representatives. And if that disappears, and they have said there'll be more resignations, because we do believe this is part of the plan, if there are more resignations, the House can go to a majority of Democrats. And then when that happens, they can easily elect a new House Speaker, which would not be favorable to anything we want to do. No, none of our bills would ever make it to the floor. Nothing we ever did would be voted or approved. And their agenda, owning the Senate, owning the presidency, and owning the House, would be full steam ahead until the election. As a matter of fact, they could even pass election rules to make it all that much harder, if not impossible, for Trump to take office. These are the stakes of the game. This is not, and I'm not even going to use the word game again, because this is not a political game anymore. This is a non-kinetic war, meaning non-bloody war. Hopefully it is anyway. There's some people that argue that and also. But my point is, the future of our country is at stake. And this is literally a war about whether we, the people, will control our country, or whether the authoritarian, uniblob, uniparty, globalist faction will control the United States. That's what it boils down to. So let's bring this back around. Why would Speaker Mike Johnson do what he said he wanted to do, especially if I'm right and he was sincere originally? Well, it's called leverage. Because just like I believe our Supreme Court has been leveraged by the threat of packing the court, I'm assuming that Mike Johnson was probably leveraged also, letting him know that if you don't pass this bill, we absolutely will have the Democrats take over the House. You will be ejected, and this agenda, Democrat agenda, the globalist agenda, will go full steam ahead. Now, I think that's a fool's bet. I think it's a fool's threat for Mike Johnson to succumb to that, because I think they're going to do it anyway. I think they're going to do everything they can to make it happen anyway. We haven't lost the fight yet. There's a lot of pressure on Mike Gallagher not to resign, or to resign prior to April 19th, so that we can fill the seat. There's a lot left to play out in this whole scenario. But when you want to ask yourself, why do things happen? Understand that the uniparty, the establishment right now, they're out in the open, and it's no holds barred. And I think probably the threat of packing the House, so to speak, if you want to put it that way, is the least of the extortion that Speaker Mike Johnson was exposed to. We can only speculate, but you got to know it had to be huge. It could be personal. It could be personal threats. It could be have to do with safety. It could be monetary. It could be monetary. It could be a whole bunch of things. But I think that threat of losing the majority in the House is probably a big part of it. And I think a lot of things that have been implemented along the way have led up to this moment, because understand the lifeblood of the establishment blob, of the administrative state, of the uniparty, of the globalist movement are these trillion-dollar spending bills. We're feeding the corruption. Our piggy bank is providing all the money in the world, all the gravy for all of the corrupt people, not just in our government, but worldwide. All of the corporations, the military industrial complex, you name it, everybody. This is where it comes from. So if there was one thing that was almost as important as keeping Trump out of office, it would have been this $1.2 trillion spending bill to keep the federal government open and to keep the cash and the gravy flowing. So hope that clears some things up for you. When you're trying to figure out what's going on and why it's going on, it really does boil down, I think, to just that. So just wanted to share that with you. We're not going to take a long time today, but wanted to get that thought out there. Todd will be back very soon. We will be back very soon with continuing commentary, explanation. And as my friend Todd always says, please remember, it's a great day to be an American, and communism and globalism, it always sucks. Thank you, everybody. Take care and have a great day.